everybody, in today's video I'm going to be showing you a 3D candy themed set that's all done with double dips dipping powder, and I actually did some dipping, and normally you guys have seen me use double dip stuff with applying it like acrylic only, and this one has a little bit of a combination of both. So that's kind of cool because you get to see how the products actually dip. So if you're looking at them for the dipping aspect, you get to see how they turn out. So I hope you guys like this as much as I do. I'm all for bright, intense color bombs. Even if it's not really seasonally appropriate, I don't really care. I hope you love this like I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So we're going to start with the color Toffee Pecan, which is $4.69 and one of my personal favorites. I'm going to do 2 coats of that. So I'm going to apply the dip base, dip it, apply a second layer of dip base, dip it again, make sure it's all covered, and then apply the activator. The color payoff is just incredible. I mean, look at that, 2 coats of dipping and it's completely opaque. I'm blown away. But then I'm going to buff it just to kind of remove, there's sort of a granular feeling to it, and then you buff it off and it's good to go. So now I'm going to use that same color Toffee Pecan, and I'm going to start sculpting out my face. And so this one was the middle nail in the set. And so I've got the jawline, and because I'm using the same color as I used in the background, it blends together so easily. You don't have any color difference between using it as dipping powder and using it with acrylic and monomer, which, just so you guys kind of have that as a knowledge base for if you get these colors with the intent to dip and aren't sure if they're going to look the same, if you do it with a different technique than I do. As you can see, they blend together seamlessly. So I have her jawline that's kind of built up a little bit, and then just a bit of cheekbones, and then I'm going to do her nose. So I don't want to do like eyes and hair and anything else in this design. I don't want the face to really be the prominent portion of what you see when you look at this. I want you to look at this nail and really the focus to be on that lollipop and the mouth. So I've got everything else is just kind of like background, like, you know, a little bit extravagant background, but still background. So I've got her nose sculpted, and now I'm still using that skin tone, which for me is the Toffee Pecan, and I'm going to sculpt out her lips. And the reason I'm sculpting the lips with the same color as the background is because then when you apply a different color on top of the lips, it looks a little bit more like she's wearing lipstick instead of just these weird lips that are stuck on top of a face. I don't know what, why it, makes a difference, because really it wouldn't think it would if you're completely covering up what you're sculpting with a different color, but I feel like it looks more real. Maybe I'm just, a lunatic. Who knows, but that's my thought on it. So I've got her upper lip, and then I'm going to be sculpting out her lower lip. And you can kind of play around with, the shape of the mouth or whatever you want. It won't even have to be open. There's just so many different options with this kind of fun, spunky design. So now with the color Lovely Pink, which is 777, which is really super sparkly and incredibly neon, I'm going to apply a very light layer of that over the top of the lips. This is almost like a wash, so the actual amount of acrylic in it is very low because I wanted it to be a little bit, almost more like a paint consistency rather than an acrylic consistency. And then going back to Toffee Pecan, I'm going to be sculpting her teeth. And the reason I did this is because I wanted the teeth to look like they were sitting up away from the background in her mouth. And so I could do this, and I'll just paint them white later, and it turns out really pretty good. And then using the color Weekend Warrior, which is 568, and another one of my personal favorites, I'm going to be sculpting her tongue. So I wanted her tongue to be a different color than her lips, and I went back and forth whether I wanted her tongue to be a lighter pink than her lips or vice versa, and I went this route, and I really like the way that it turned out. So I've got the tongue, going to create the little indent down the center of the tongue, kind of keep it relatively flat so it's not sticking up too much. Again, I really want the focus of this whole set to be on the candy. So the next color I'm using is Cutie Patootie, which is $4.95, and that is kind of like a Tiffany blue, tealish aqua color, and I'm going to be sculpting the little lollipop that she is licking. So I'm going to be covering up the majority of that tongue that I just sculpted with a circle of that color, and I'm going to let that set up for a second so that it slightly turns matte, and then apply a second layer of that color over the top of it so it has a really nice domed appearance. And then going back to my color, the skin tone, I'm going to be sculpting the stick of my lollipop. Now, the reason I'm using the skin tone instead of a different color is because if you use a different color, it's going to go all the way down, and it's going to like go around her chin, and it's going to be this bar of that color all the way down, and it's not going to look quite right. But if you sculpt it with the same as your background color, when you go and you paint the line on top, it looks a little bit more like the stick isn't conforming to the line of her chin. It looks like it is floating where it's supposed to be, and it just looks a little bit better. And using the same color, I'm going to be sculpting out her fingers. So as I said before, I want the candy to be the main focus. So a lot of this design is really, that background color is like a separate thing, almost so you don't see it. And then it's got that bright pop of color here and there. So I'm going to be sculpting her fingers. There's not too much there available since we are kind of at the tip of the nail where there isn't much space left, but sculpt whatever of the hand you can fit and sort of work it around the lollipop stick. That'd be better. Yeah, the lollipop stick. And so just sculpt whatever you can of those fingers. You can add a little bit of detail to them if you'd like to, like a couple little lines in them for knuckles. You can add a fingernail. I would definitely add a fingernail. I like to use the same color as the lipstick, so that one would be the lovely pink. And then with some acrylic paint, I'm going to be doing a little bit of definition on the details. So I'm going to use a diluted brown to be adding some shading on her face and on her hands to kind of give her a little bit more of a warm tone to her skin and give it just a little bit more of like a, I don't know, contoured look, which is so trendy these days in the cosmetic industry. Around the nose a little bit, like I definitely in the hollows of her cheek, jawline, around the hand, fingers a little bit. Fill in between her teeth and her tongue with some black paint and do a little bit of outlining. I don't want to over outline this. I want to keep the outlines very light and minimal. So I did actually dilute my black paint quite a bit more than I normally do so that the lines weren't as intensely black. They were more of like a softer black, if that makes sense, just to kind of give them a very slight outline without overdoing it. A bit on the lips too, just to make those stand out. Then with white paint, like I said I'm going to be painting over her teeth. And I'm also going to be using that same painting over it idea for the stick of the lollipop with the white and really make that look like it's standing out. And then using the same white paint, I'm going to be adding a little swirly on the lollipop. So I've got the one line going across the bottom, or two lines, I guess, going across the bottom, but then I'm going to do a third that actually ends in a little swirl right on the very top so that it has that nice little curly look to it that I kind of incorporated throughout the design. Got that going. And then after you have all of those little details and you are happy with them, this nail is ready for top coating. Here's something that I don't mention very often, and I probably should. My favorite thing to top coat my 3D art with is going to be matte lacquer. So this is a matte top coat that is not a gel product. You don't have to cure it. It isn't anything like that. And the one I've been using, I've gotten this question, is the Morgan Taylor Mattes or Wrap, I think is what it's called, but it's the Morgan Taylor matte top coat. It gives me such nice results. And then with gel sealer, I'm going to apply that over the lollipop, the fingernail, and the lips. So now to start this next one, I'm going to be using some of the colors I showed you previously, as well as Lollipop, which is color 702, which is just a really nice purple. And so now on that nail form backing, like I said, I used a couple colors I've shown you already, lovely pink, Cutie Patootie, and that Lollipop color, and I'm going to be sculpting a bunch of different candy pieces. So this is kind of a similar idea to one of my Halloween designs that I did recently, but I wanted to kind of, I don't know, come back to that one because I enjoyed it so much. Making that nail was so much fun. So I wanted to do it again because, why not? So I've got a couple different shapes of candies that I'm going to be making. I've got a lollipop and I used a piece of wire to create the stick for it, and then a couple little just like wrapped candies. So I've got the one that is just like round, and then I'm also going to be doing some that are more long and skinny shaped, more like a Tootsie Roll. So I'm going to use those three colors and kind of alternate between them and what color I'm using for what. So I've got the Cutie Patootie, I think is my favorite color from the, my recent double dip acquisitions. That color is just so pretty. And I can see myself using it so much in the coming future. But I've got those couple bar shaped candies. And once you have the middle of the candies sculpted, so you've got like all of this like basic, and they look pretty matte, pretty set up. So you can see on the two smaller circle ones, there's no sheen left. The acrylic, it's completely cured. Then you can go through and you can add the little ribbon tails on the end of the candies where it was twisted. And I like to use a different color for that, which isn't necessarily how all of them look. So you can use the same color or a different color, switch it up however you like, but just create these little triangle shaped ends on them. And they don't have to be perfect triangles. You can kind of, flare them out, make them a little bit wavy looking, however you want to do it. But make sure that you add that little detail to all of them that would be wrapped. So all of them that have kind of that texture on them. And so I'm kind of trying to alternate best I can what colors I'm using where, so it's not like the same thing over and over again, and add them like that in a couple different sizes. Like I've got smaller ones and bigger ones of these candies, helps for when you go to start placing them on the nail. So now to place them on the nail, I'm going to be brushing a very thin layer of jewelry gel over the entire nail, kind of really working it into the surface of that nail that's been dipped with the Toffee Pecan like I showed you in the first nail. So after I've got that on, then I'm going to apply a thin layer of matte gel top coat. This time it is gel, matte gel top coat over the jewelry gel. and just kind of making sure I completely cover that jewelry gel so that once this nail is cured, there's no shininess left. And then I can start placing my pieces of candy down. I'm going to kind of alternate what shapes are where and kind of mix up the different colors too best I can. Just like so, kind of tip them back and forth. And the great thing with the jewelry gel is you have time to play with, where things are placed until you cure it. So you don't have to worry about being rushed or trying to do anything too quickly. You have time to make sure it looks as perfect as it can. I'm going to fill in the gaps with a couple little rhinestones here and there just so that the nail looks nice and complete. And then after that's cured, as you can see, the background turns matte, and I'm going to be adding some details to my candies with white paint. So I've got on my Lollipop, I'm going to be doing a swirl around the middle of it, going all the way around in a little swirly. Something like that, doing a swirl like that is one of my favorite things to paint because it is such a high concentration activity, because you have to really be cautious that you're doing exactly, how you want it to look, and it has that perfect swirl. So much fun for me. Might be high stress for somebody, but I thrive in that kind of situation, I guess. And then I put some stripes on the one kinds of candies and some polka dots on the other ones. After that's all dry, you can apply a layer of gel sealer over the candies so that they're nice and shiny and they really show up against that background. And now on the ring nail that's also been dipped with the Toffee Pecan, I'm going to apply a bead of those 3 colors I'm using for the candies near the cuticles, give them a gentle swirl, and then pat that out so that you have a nice little blend from color to color across the top of it, and just kind of give it a flat look, and then use your jewelry gel and apply a straight line down the nail and then some matte gel top coat over the top of it, just like you did, same basic idea as your thumbnail. And then I'm going to place those rhinestones going down a straight line to act as the stick of this lollipop. So they go straight down, press them into the jewelry gel like so. And like I said before, you have time to play around to make sure that these are in a super straight line before you cure. And then after that's all cured, then you can take, and I'm going to do a different kind of swirl from this lollipop going around from the center, kind of like fanning out. So the background color will show through about 50%. So the great thing with that is if you aren't 100% happy with the swirl of your background, you have time, or you have, you have the knowledge that you can cover part of it up. So if, you're looking at it and you're like, man, this whole area right here is just not looking good, then add the swirl right there or put a stripe across it or whatever. You can cover it up because you have that ability to fix things along the way. So after you're finished with that painting, then that lollipop can also get a little bit of a gel sealer over the top of it to make sure it is super, super shiny looking and kind of has that wrapped appearance. So now on the index nail, I applied a layer, or the index and pinky, I'm applying a layer of the double dip base, and then I'm going to dip it into those 3 colors and try to, as quickly as I can, create an ombre with these. For me personally, creating an ombre with dipping powder is not nearly as easy as it is with acrylic, but I did try and I'm pretty happy with my results. But then after it's got 2 coats on it, apply the activator, make sure that the surface is not sticky anymore, and then you can buff it with a buffer block. Same thing, just to kind of take away that granular or sort of sandpaperish texture that the nail will have after it's been dipped. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about doing any other filing with this. Just a little rough, or a little bit of buffing to get rid of the rough texture, and it's good to go. On the pinky with white paint, I'm going to be doing some stripes across the nail. So just some straight, kind of almost like candy cane type stripes going across. And this is the same thing if you guys are doing an ombre like I did, and I've honestly never done an ombre like that with dipping powder. So I was like, I'm just going to see how this goes. And it was pretty good. I'm happy with my results for my first try for sure. But it's not perfect. And I'm usually somebody that's like, this has got to be perfect. So then, add some stripes on top, which I intended to do anyway. But it kind of gives you peace of mind to know that you're going to stick something else on top of it if you aren't 100% happy. And I remember one class that I took back when I was just a beginning nail tech, and the person said the great thing with nail art is it hides your mistakes. And so that's something that is just so true, especially if you have a nail that, let's say you're sculpting out a sculpted extensions and you have a smile line, and one of your smile lines has a little bit of a, like a little mess up in it. It's not quite perfect. If you add a flower on top of that, nobody's ever going to know. So on the index nail, to add a bit of a candy swirl to this one, I'm going to go through, like I said, guys, I love making these little swirls that go around and around and around. They're one of my favorites, so I'm going to do another one of those. And just create that full circle, just going around it like so. Start in the middle of the nail as my main tip for this, and just take your time. The other thing is you want to pull your paintbrush toward your hand. So if you're using your right hand like I am, you're going to paint from left to right. You're not going to try to paint, from right to left, because that's not going to work as well for you. And I've seen people try to do that, but always pull toward your hand with your brush, and that will make creating those lines so much easier. And this is the final look. I am so in love with these. I am like drooling over them, even though, they're candy, and that's not even part of it. I just love the colors. I love the whole vibe of this set so much. So I hope you guys love it as much as I do, and I will put all the links to the double dip colors and discount code and all of that great stuff in the description box below. So check for that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.